Hello, AP Psychology. We are about to begin our next unit on developmental psychology. And this is one of my favorite units to teach because it's the study of who we are, how we get to be the people that we are. And we all want to understand ourselves a little bit better and be able to describe why and how we go through these processes of change in our life. And that's what this whole unit is all about. So let's get started and see what we can learn today. So we are going to start our focus of developmental psychology, and we're going to look at the theories of Erikson. You're going to hear about a lot of different psychologists in this unit, and all of them have different theories about how we develop. So it's going to be really important to try to compartmentalize and remember each of these individuals and what their thinking was in terms of how we developed. So Erikson is going to be associated with what we call psychosocial development. And that's really about our emotional development and how our relationships with people spur on our development and how it impacts us at different times in our lives. So learning about Erikson's psychosocial development, you can see that what it really is when we are born, when we are an infant, single stage in our life, our psychosocial development, we become a little more complex the older that we get. And so we need to understand what happens at those stages. So when we study human development, we need to understand what that actually means. And the study of human development is the scientific study of the changes that occur to people as they age. So these can include physical, cognitive, and social development. And as we study development, we need to consider the three major issues that come into the research of human development. And one of those questions is the nature versus nurture question. And how is our nature, how does that influence our behavior? How does our experience influence our behavior and our experiences? The other has to do with the continuity and these stages. Is our development a gradual process? Does one thing kind of mesh into the other? Or is our lives just a sequence of separate stages? And then finally, do our personality traits, do they persist throughout our life? Or are we able to change as we age? Or are we all still, the older we get, really that same person that we were when we were much younger? So these are some of the ideas and the issues and things that researchers consider when they are studying development. We already know about longitudinal studies, but longitudinal studies are very important to the study of human development. This is where you follow the same group of people over a period of time to evaluate the changes in those individuals. And that's what development is. If it wasn't for longitudinal studies, we wouldn't understand what all of these changes actually are. The other type of important information that we want to know is we need to compare different groups at the same time. And with a cross-sectional study, you can look at people of different ages, examine them at the same time, and then you can see how these people maybe perform or behave or respond to a particular function at the same time while you're able to compare one group to the other. Let's jump into Erikson and his theories of psychosocial development. So Erikson was a developmental psychologist, and what he focused on and what he believed was that in every stage of our life, we have a crisis. And we need a resolution to that crisis in order to move on to the next stage and be a successful, complete person. And these stages of development, he identified 8 of these different stages. And they begin in infancy, and they will take us through to the very end of our life. So you can see here listed, just as you can in your notes, this is sort of a roadmap for psychotherapists in trying to identify what people are going through at the different stages of their life. So the very first stage is what we call trust versus mistrust. And this is typically from about the ages of birth to 18 months. And what an infant is learning at this stage is really, can I trust the adult who's taking care of me? If you are in a situation, if your child is left in a situation where they have an unresponsive or maybe unpredictable caregiver, this can actually lead an infant to be mistrustful. Every single living organism on this planet requires some level of care and nurture after birth. And humans are especially in need of that care. So this is a critical stage for infants. And the outcome, if they are given that care, is that they have hope. They know that someone will be there to fulfill their needs, and they develop that secure attachment. If that care isn't provided, then they begin to develop mistrust, and there is an element of social withdrawal. And one of those important events in the life of an infant, everything revolves around feeding. And if they are hungry and they cry to be fed, somebody shows up to feed them. That is how an infant learns to trust or mistrust. The next stage is what we call autonomy versus shame and doubt. And this is kind of the toddler stage. And anywhere from about 18 months all the way till they're 3 years old. And this is the second stage. This is kind of the me do it, I do it, I do it, I can stage. Like, they want to be independent. They're beginning to explore their world. They're beginning to understand that they have some control over things. And the question that they're thinking in their mind, these little kids, these little toddlers, is, can I do things for myself? Or does someone need to do it for me? So the outcome in all of this is that there is some independence, and they can learn to cope. Maybe you don't have to come running to their crib or their bed when they cry. Maybe they learn how to self-soothe themselves. They can put themselves back to sleep. Without this independence building, a lot of times toddlers in this age it results in shame and doubt. And toilet training is like the big activity of this age and this stage. If you can master toilet training, how independent are you? But think what happens when they have an accident. The shame, the guilt, the doubt that can be inflicted on this child. So the second stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. The next stage is preschool age, roughly 3 to 5 years of age. And this is kind of when kids start going to preschool and they become much more capable of initiating their own activities, playing with themselves, hopefully playing with others. What's really important here, though, is the feedback that they receive. They need to feel worthy, or else they will feel bogged down by guilt because their behavior is inadequate. And that word initiative means ambition and responsibility, and that is developed when parents allow these kids to explore on their own. And maybe they just offer support when it's absolutely needed. But if kids are unsuccessful at this, this is when they start to feel guilty and they don't feel like they are meeting the expectations of their parents. They begin to lie about things and maybe withhold the truth, and then they feel guilty about lying. So it's an important stage. But these kids, even as young as they are, they interpret their being of who they are based on the encouragement that they receive from their parents and teachers in a preschool situation. Next stage is industry versus inferiority, and this is the fourth stage of development. And again, it's really school age, and it's from about 6 years of age till puberty. And kids are just intrigued with the world around them. They want to be productive. They want to do something. They want to learn something. And kids who succeed in this stage develop a sense of mastery and competence. And if you don't grasp concepts and ideas and don't feel that success of being productive, it can lead to feelings of inferiority or inadequacy. And so kids are constantly being given and shown new skills. And we reward kids in school, stars on their papers, awards at school. But if you don't feel worthy of those awards, then very often you begin to feel inferior. And quite often that sense of inferiority can lead to kids giving up. And imagine being in elementary school and already feeling inferior. And this stage right here is critical in setting the stage for adolescence and even into adulthood. So industry versus inferiority. The next stage, this is where you guys are at right now. This is identity versus role confusion. And I know you probably don't like to think of yourself as an adolescent, but that's just kind of the vocabulary and the terminology that gets used for this stage. So anywhere from 12 years to 18 years is how Erikson would describe what's going on for you. Identity versus role confusion. You're exploring who you are, how you fit into society, and again, encouragement is so important, and reinforcement is important, and your sense and your willingness and desire to do some personal exploration is going to emerge during this stage, and you're developing a sense of self and a feeling of independence. You begin to maybe not want to do so many things with your family because you are in this stage of creating your own personal identity. The other side of this is that role confusion. And what the role confusion can often result in is a bit of rebellion. You don't want to be, you're trying to fight this battle that's going on inside your mind about who you are and who you want to be, and finding a place where you feel safe and accepted. And so one of the most important events of this stage are going to be those relationships that you have with others. And those relationships can be good and bad in terms of positive development for you at this stage of life. The next stage is intimacy versus isolation. You're getting a little older, okay? This is from roughly ages 18 into your mid-30s. And this is the sixth stage of Erik's psychosocial development. And this is the time in life when adults begin to form meaningful relationships. And if they don't develop those meaningful relationships, very often they have a sense of loss of connection. Think about all of the major milestones that are happening to individuals between 18 to 35. Many individuals will leave home for the first time, move away to college, developing or trying to develop a whole new set of friends. And some people are very successful at it and others don't. And so those battles, this battle of intimacy versus isolation becomes very real. And as you move into your middle 20s and you graduated from college and now you're trying to decide about a relationship with a significant other, is this a long-term relationship that will carry into my later stages in life? Maybe you're confused about all of that, but there's this pressure on you to have these relationships. So that major question of will I be loved or will I be alone is prominent in the minds of individuals at this stage. The next stage is generativity versus stagnation. This is where your parents are. And this is primarily middle-aged adults, and they begin thinking about how they are contributing to the next generation, you, or society, or if maybe they are missing those connections to others. And the question, how can I contribute to the world? How can I do this at work? How can I do this in my home? How can I do this with my friendships? And the outcome at this stage for many, the goal is satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. But very often what happens is a sense of boredom sets in. You know, you've been grinding at work for a long time. Your kids are getting older and my gosh, they're in high school, they're about to graduate, and oh, you're so tired of hounding them about homework. Oh, so much. Or work becomes so important that you don't have room for things in your life that maybe might give you more satisfaction. The last stage is what we call ego integrity versus despair. And this is from age 65 and on. And these are people in late adulthood who are very often reflecting on their lives. And believe it or not, a lot of times, you know, they feel quite satisfied. Okay, they've moved beyond all the messiness of all those other stages and they have a time to reflect on things. And they look at the question, did I live a meaningful life? And very often they are happy about it. And they like to talk about it and they like to share what has happened in their life with others. But it can also be, again, self-absorbed. And self-absorbed in maybe a different way. Self-absorbed because there's nobody else to take care of them at this time. They have to take care of themselves, and that might entail a lot of doctor's visits and their health issues. And maybe they've had a long career and now they've retired. And what are they going to do with their time? So ego integrity versus despair can be a pretty mixed bag for a lot of adults. So those are the stages of Erikson's psychosocial development. You'll have to come to class to learn the mnemonic that I have to help you remember these stages. So there you go, AP Psychology. Please include any questions or thoughts that you have as you learned about these stages and bring them to class because there's all kinds of great discussions that are waiting for us.